How's it going, guys? So I figured that I'd do a little review on what I watched the other day. I watched the Ruthless Aggression series. I watched episodes 1 and 2 over on the WWE Network. Now, I figured as a fan of this era, well, many parts of it wasn't perfect. There were a lot of moments in Ruthless Aggression era that were boring, or, I wasn't crazy about everybody at that time. But, looking back on the Ruthless Aggression era, it was great in comparison to today's product. I even said it in my last Raw review. I said I wasn't crazy about MVP, but when I look at MVP and I look back on MVP's matches, MVP looks like The Rock in comparison to someone like Ricochet. So it goes without saying that Ruthless Aggression era, when you look at it in retrospect, history has been very kind to it. Because lucky for it, it's a very weird way of kind of looking at it from that perspective. It's actually kind of good that today's product is so bad, because it makes the Ruthless Aggression era, which was noticeably of less quality than the Attitude era. Now, I know there's some people who prefer the Ruthless Aggression era, but those might be people that grew up with it. See, I kind of grew up with both. Ruthless Aggression era was 2002. So, I turned 15 that year. So, you could say, okay, I still spent my teenage years watching the Ruthless Aggression era and some of my early adulthood. So, I've had stock in both eras. So, I like both of them. They're both good eras, without a doubt, but Attitude Era is so much better. Just, come on. The Attitude Era, I'm sorry, but, when you look at the main stars like Stone Cold and The Rock, I'd rather have them than Batista and John Cena. Even though those are great stars, there's really kind of no comparison for, who had the better moments, who had more memorable matches, and more specifically, moments. Because I said, at the end of the day, when everybody looks back on The Rock and Stone Cold, you don't really hear people talking about matches. You talk about moments. You talk about the funny promos of The Rock when he made fun of Rikishi, when he made fun of Billy Gunn, the things he used to say to Jonathan Coachman backstage, Stone Cold when he was driving the Zamboni, the beer truck. No one ever really talks about, I'm talking not like the YouTube wrestling channels and the YWC and, to go even further, the internet wrestling community, and all the numerous, blogs and, dirt sheet reviews and all that nonsense. I'm not counting that talk about, the matches and stuff like that. Normal everyday people, when wrestling gets brought up in a conversation, this is normally what people usually bring up. They bring up the great classic moments. That's what most people talk about when they talk about the WWE and they talk about wrestling. So WWE once again is dipping into the nostalgia, dipping into the past, because hell, They can't be bothered to come up with good material. And so they bring forth the Ruthless Aggression series. Right? They did the Monday Night Wars. I never even watched every single episode because, I don't know, I just kind of got bored with it. The thing is, you got to understand with WWE, they're always going to talk about, WCW sucked. And, you get a lot of that. So let's break this down. So they talk about it's right after the Attitude Era, and Vince buys WCW. The talent comes over during the invasion, and they show Booker T and Buff Bagwell and why the crowd booed them out of the building. And kind of looking back on that, it's kind of like they just threw a random WCW match on Raw. Kind of like what they would do today. Like, kind of think about this for a moment. And I still remember that night pretty clearly. And this is back actually when WWE television was good, but I don't know who was really directly responsible for this. Why would you put Booker T and Buff Bagwell in a WCW World Title match, and you don't even have any build up throughout the night? You just say, like, these are two top stars in WCW. You know, and they start, like, saying about, like, Buff Bagwell and who's Buff Bagwell, and he was a star in WCW, but he wasn't a star in WWF. So, you know, that wasn't the problem. It was the fact that, like, there's no reason to care about this match because it's a random match. And you're just like, oh, here's WCW. There's no reason. So they make it like people, they just love WWE so much, and they just didn't like WCW. And they wanted bigger stars. Well, okay, I can agree with that. You know, even Vince Russo has gone on record saying that, like, you know, you didn't really have big stars. You know, you didn't have Hulk Hogan, you didn't have Goldberg, you didn't have Scott Steiner, you didn't have Kevin Nash, you didn't have Scott Hall, you know, you didn't have Sting, you didn't have Ric Flair at first, you know, and the thing is, Bruce Prichard is there. This guy who's like over there writing SmackDown, executive director, whatever his role is. This guy is single-handedly responsible for a lot of the crap we see today. A lot of the garbage we see today. This man right here. And they're putting him front and center in this special. Like, this guy knows what he's talking about. Now, I'm not going to say that Bruce Prichard hasn't had a lot of good ideas when it comes to professional wrestling and sports entertainment and WWE. The guy's also a great character. He played Brother Love, right? A few other things, you know. But Bruce Prichard has, you know, is overrated in a lot of areas. Because he's also produced a lot of garbage. He was also there right before Vince Russo took over creative. With 1995 and all the bad ideas and all the stupid, you know, cartoonish characters that they came up with when WWE was failing big time. Kind of resembles, you know, the way how things are going today. I mean, I don't think they're doing as bad financially nowadays as they're doing, as they were doing in the 90s. You know, obviously, they're holding the shows in bigger stadiums. They've got billion-dollar deals. They lose a lot of money. You know, a lot of times more than they make, which a lot of people, you know, like to say that's not true, but it actually is. They actually lose a lot of money each year. Just like they don't even turn a profit on NXT, which everyone always forgets about. Okay, regardless of that, you know, Bruce Prichard is sitting here in this first episode of Ruthless Aggression, and he's talking about, you know, like what it means to, you know, be a star and star power and everything, and, you know, establishing a big name in front of an audience. Bruce, yo, I'm looking at today's show, and I'm not seeing a lot of star power. You know, and so, like, they make, like, you know, it was a failure and everything, and they had to go back to the drawing board, and they kind of, like, I don't know, gloss over this kind of a little bit. You know, they say, oh, we've got too much talent, and, you know, this was interfering with everyone else. And so they kind of, like, jump around a little bit, and then they start talking about the brand extension. And how they say that this brand extension was absolutely necessary. That they needed to do this. And they also they also admit, and also they have Brian Gerwitz. Is it Gerwitz or Gerwitz? However you say the guy's name. He was the lead creative guy from 2002 on. Now Gerwitz is sitting there. And what's funny is, like, he's talking about creative mistakes and everything, and everyone makes mistakes and everything like that. But it's like, I can't just, I can't help but say to myself, like, yeah, but dude, like, you're talking about these ideas, you know, and you were responsible for a lot of them, you know? So anyway, well, he wasn't responsible for the invasion. He wasn't there at that point. I don't know who was writing during that time. But anyway, you know, I mean, it's okay. You know, you could criticize yourself looking back at your body of work and everything. But, like, there were a lot of years when Gerwitz, like, did not do a good job. You know, like, I'm kind of looking at, like, 2010. Like, those were really dark years also for WWE, where nothing interesting was going on at all. You also got to take a look at Gerwitz was there when they completely made the Bret Hart return feel completely worthless. So, you know, Gerwitz is there, and, like, they got him talking, and, you know, I don't know. He's kind of like, they got him there like he's some type of great writer or something. And no, he was. But, you know, I like how they hold this guy in high regard, but Vince Russo is like, oh, this guy is Satan's spawn. He's horrible. But, like, Gerwitz is great. He could be on the network and we could praise him. All, you know, he's willing to be on the network at least. Anyway, you know, these guys are, like, kind of talking about from the perspective, like, the product is great today. I kept getting that feeling. So, they talk about 2002, and they talk about the brand extension, the brand split, and they knew that the ratings were going to go down because people were going to turn on the TV, and they weren't going to see certain stars. And they said this was going to be their way of building new stars. So they're actually acknowledging that it was a bad idea, but they said the long-term goal was in mind. And they make like it was a successful move. Which, and I never really understood this. Like, I gotta say, I liked the concept at first. When this idea was introduced, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. You know, it will build stars. There's gonna be more TV time for people. But you notice it really didn't work out that way. I don't know what it was, but in a weird way, the brand extension really didn't build any new stars. And from what I remember, and I went back and I looked at the ratings after that, and we'll get to that in a moment. So then they also talk about OVW. And they said, you know, we had to get like a developmental territory. And I was like, hold on a second. Hold on one cotton picking minute. Brock Lesnar came from OVW. And the brand extension, he was there before the brand extension even began. And not only that, I remember OVW. I remember them sending the Big Show down there so he could lose some weight, work on his skills, right after they put him in the WrestleMania main event, which was kind of weird. I guess it was more about his weight than anything. Back in 2000, I was like, they had OVW for 2 years at this point. And they're talking about acquiring OVW or making OVW. First of all, OVW belonged to the NWA. I don't know who put this together, but I'm like, that's inaccurate. That's not accurate at all. Then they talk about how the brand extension was like something magic. And that, like, you know, they show that Ric Flair and the NWO came. Never mind that the NWO failed drastically. They don't mention that. And then they make, like, it benefited greatly, and that sometimes SmackDown was better than Raw, which was very true, by the way. Yes, that was true. In 2002 and 2003, I totally agree. SmackDown was a superior show. There was just better stuff going on with Brock Lesnar and Eddie Guerrero, and they had some good tag division stuff going on. And that was the show that The Undertaker was on later, that became so they seem to have glossed over one major fact, by the way. I went and I looked at the ratings. The ratings did fall slightly and improve a little bit, but they did just decline as time went on. They were getting a lot of threes, and they never really recovered from that. They were getting 3.5s almost consistently. So, I don't know what they're trying to say here. That the ratings improve because of the brand extension. But that's simply not true at all. So they make like they're a giant success. They're patting themselves on the back for something that wasn't successful. The brand extension was not successful. It was something that they kept doing, and it was stupid, and it was dumb, because they were separating their roster. They were stopping themselves from having a good show, because why? They insisted on having two shows. There's nothing that says, that's written in stone, that they need to have two shows. Them having two shows is the reason why Vince Russo left. It was too much. Oh, you can make the argument they were overextending themselves. So they gave them a break and split the shows. Them. They still had to work house shows. They started doing even more house shows at that time. So that was BS. So they make like the brand extension was a work of genius, that they sacrificed, a short-term loss for a long-term monetary ratings gain, which was simply not true. Lies all over the place in this special, in this series. And they're lying up and down. They don't want to take any responsibility for not making any of those WCW guys stars. And they're making like these guys were like inexperienced, but meanwhile, like a lot of them were doing just fine in WCW. Like, they don't even want to talk about how they failed a great athlete like Sean O'Hare. They completely ruined that guy. When you want to talk about a specimen of a man, a guy who had a great character, great promo, great wrestling. So the guy hit a better swanton bomb than Jeff Hardy. And they want to talk about, these guys weren't ready. No, they weren't ready. They had some great stars. And when they're talking about guys that, weren't ready and didn't fit in. And then they when they're talking about that, they show the face of Bryan Adams, who was Crush. The guy who faced Macho Man at WrestleMania 10. The guy you pushed first. And then, when you got tired of him, he went to WCW. So, I'm watching this special, and I'm just, getting pissed off, basically. Because, and I'm looking back at it, and I'm like, oh, yeah, and everything, this was a great moment. But then I realized, wow, there's a lot of dishonesty and a lot of rewriting of history on this thing, isn't there? They're not being honest at all. They're making the Ruthless Aggression era was the perfect time that they improved their business model for the long term. No, this was the start of the decline, is what it was. It really showed that they really, didn't know what to do after the Attitude Era. And I really, really strongly feel that way. They were like coasting on their Attitude Era feelings. And then what they started to do was put down edgy TV in this. And they started to talk about like, you know, oh, they started being, you know, they were trying too hard to be edgy and everything. And like, you know, and they start like putting down all the stuff that like people remember, like the Billy and Chuck wedding. Okay, you know, you might say like, all right, maybe they went too far with that, you know, doing a gay wedding and stuff like that, you know, but it was memorable. You look back and everybody remembers that, you know, Eric Bischoff peeling off, you know, the fake mask, you know, when he was pretending to be the priest. And I'm like, why are you trying so hard to like try to rewrite history and everything? Like, oh, edgy TV is bad. Ooh, Crash TV is bad. You know, I just, this kind of gave me the willies in a way. I'm just like, ugh, just like, you guys are like so self-absorbed. Bruce Prichard is sitting there patting himself on the back. Oh, we know how to build stars. We're the WWE. Give me a break. Bruce, you're there right now and you're doing a horrible job. You're doing an awful job. This product is pathetic. Pathetic. It's awful. It's terrible. It's no good. You're not doing your job. Basically. Your job is to deliver a good show. Not doing it. It's not, there's nothing entertaining. There's nothing good. And, you know, it doesn't help that they're rewriting history to try to make themselves look better now. Because they're putting on absolute garbage TV. And so they try to make like, oh, well, doing a brand split is smart. No, it's not. No, it's not. When your roster is as thin as can be, you should not be separating it. You should not be sacrificing, you know, TV time when you could be building stars into something bigger. And you're talking about building stars then. And you want to knock some of the WCW guys. Guys, you had Booker T and DDP. And you didn't even do anything substantial with Diamond Dallas Page, who had like one of the best main event, most popular matches with Goldberg. Bruce Prichard talks about how people didn't want to pay up. They didn't feel like the contracts of Hulk Hogan and Goldberg, that their AOL Time Warner contracts weren't worth it. If they didn't think that the guys were big enough stars, then why didn't you pay out? I mean, I don't think they noticed, but in an effort to try to make themselves look good and smart, they also made themselves look pretty damn stupid. And why is Michael Rappaport like narrating this thing? It's like not a very good narration voice. Like a good actor, but not really like a good narrator. All right, whatever. But anyway, guys, I hope you all enjoyed this review. I'm thinking about reviewing part 2, which I've already watched. Let me know if you'd like to see that in the comments down below. Maybe I'll do it anyway, whether you comment on it or not. But, guys, thank you all for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell so you get all the notifications when I post all my new videos. And I'll see you next time.